The between was nothing like Kira had imagined. She'd expected darkness, cold, perhaps the suffocating weight of death pressing against her skin. Instead, the realm beyond Andros's threshold was grey, everything rendered in shades of ash and silver, as if the world had been drained of all colour but retained its form. The air itself seemed to shimmer with a quality that made her eyes water, neither liquid nor solid, but something that existed in the space between states. Captain Rhen stood beside her, one hand still gripping Kira's shoulder from when they'd crossed the threshold together. The captain's weathered face had gone pale, her dark eyes wide as she took in their surroundings. 7 bleeding hells, Rhen whispered. We're dead, aren't we? Not dead. The voice came from ahead, where a figure materialized from the grey mist, like ink bleeding through wet paper. Not yet. The spirit knight Andros had bound to guide them took shape before them. A woman in armour that had long ago ceased to exist in the mortal realm. The plate was archaic in design, all sweeping curves and elegant lines that spoke of the old kingdom's craftsmanship. What should have been steel gleamed like polished bone, and where a face should have shone through the raised visor, there was only a soft pearl-white glow. I am Ser Elara Brightshield, the spirit said, her voice carrying the quality of wind through empty halls. I served your grandfather, child of the Brightborn line. I fell defending the crown on the night of the Sundering. Kira's throat tightened. The fragment beneath her cloak pulsed warmly, as if recognizing the dead knight's oath. Andros sent you to guide us. The shipbreaker remembers old debts. Elara turned, her movements too fluid, lacking the weight and friction of living flesh. The grey roads will take you far, but they are not without danger. The dead do not all sleep peacefully, and some things that walk these paths never lived at all. The spirit began walking, and the grey world seemed to shift around her footsteps, forming a path where none had been visible before. Kira exchanged a glance with Rhen, then followed. Behind them, the threshold Andros had opened was already fading, and through its dying light she could hear the distant sounds of combat, steel on steel, and something else, something that made the darkness itself scream. Hold them! She thought desperately toward the fading portal. Just hold them long enough. The grey roads were aptly named. They stretched ahead in impossible directions, sometimes climbing through mist that felt like memory, sometimes descending into valleys where the dead gathered in silent multitudes. The spirits varied. Some were little more than wisps of consciousness, echoes of people who'd left barely a ripple in the world. Others were more distinct, retaining enough of their living selves to turn and watch as the 3 figures passed. Kira felt their attention like cold fingers trailing across her skin. Some looked at her with curiosity, others with hunger. One elderly woman, her form flickering like a guttering candle, reached out as they passed. Brightborn, the spirit whispered. You carry the light. I remember when the crown blazed like the sun itself, before the darkness came, before... Her form scattered like smoke in wind, the memory too painful or too distant to maintain. Don't stray from the path, Elara warned without turning. And don't speak to them unless you wish to join them. The dead are lonely, and loneliness has a gravity all its own. Rhen kept close to Kira's side, her hand never straying far from the cutlass at her hip, though Kira doubted steel would be much use here. How long will this take? The captain asked. Time moves differently in the between, doesn't it? It does. Elara's voice carried a note that might have been amusement in life. We walk for hours here, and minutes pass in the mortal realm. Or we walk for minutes, and years slip by above. The grey roads follow their own rules. Comforting, Rhen muttered. They walked in silence for what felt like hours, though Kira had no way to measure time in this colourless place. The fragment against her chest had grown warmer, pulsing with a steady rhythm that reminded her of a heartbeat. Or perhaps it was her own heartbeat she felt, amplified by the fragment's presence. It was becoming harder to tell where she ended and the crown's power began. That thought should have frightened her more than it did. Ser Elara, Kira said finally, unable to bear the silence any longer. You said you fell on the night of the Sundering. What really happened? Andros told me it wasn't an accident, but I need to understand. Betrayal. The Spirit Knight's voice went hard as stone. That is what happened, child. We knew the ritual would be dangerous. Reforging the crown's power to strengthen the void barriers, to push back the darkness that had been creeping closer for years. Your grandfather, King Aldric, gathered the most powerful weavers in the realm. Varek Shadowmere was among them. Kira's breath caught. She'd suspected, but hearing it confirmed sent ice through her veins. We should have seen it, Elara continued, and now there was pain in her voice, the kind of anguish that could survive death itself. The signs were all there. Varek had been gathering his own followers, speaking of a new order for Valthyria. But he was brilliant, and the king trusted him. When the ritual began, Varek, he twisted it. Instead of strengthening the barriers, he shattered them. The backlash tore the crown apart, and the king. The spirit's form flickered violently, as if the memory alone was enough to unmake her. Your grandfather died, holding the throne room doors, Elara said quietly. He died so that others might flee, so that your mother might flee, carrying you in her womb, so that one day the Brightborn line might return to finish what he began. Kira felt tears on her cheeks, hot against the cool grey air. She'd never known her grandfather. Her mother had spoken of him only rarely and always in whispers, as if afraid the wrong ears might hear. Now she understood why. And the others who served him? Kira asked. The knights, the loyalists? Most of us died that night. Elara's voice was matter-of-fact, the tone of someone who'd had 20 years to make peace with death. Those who survived scattered. Some went into hiding. Others, like Commander Ironhold, gathered the remnants and continued to fight. And some, like me, found ourselves unable to move on. We swore oaths, you see, oaths that bind beyond death. The spirit turned to face Kira fully for the first time, and the white glow where her face should have been seemed to intensify. I swore to protect the crown and those of Brightborn blood who bore it. That oath holds me here, in the between. When Andros called, I answered, as I will answer when you take up the crown itself, child, as will others. I don't know if I can do this, Kira admitted. The words felt like a confession. I'm a scribe. I spent my life hiding what I was. How am I supposed to reforge the crown? How am I supposed to unite a realm that's been broken for 20 years? The same way your grandfather did, Elara said simply. One step at a time, one choice at a time. Starting with the choice you've already made, to seek the second fragment rather than hide. A sound echoed through the grey mist then, distant but distinct. Hunting horns, carried on a wind that didn't exist. Elara's form snapped to attention, her hand going to a sword that was only half visible. They've found the threshold, the spirit said. Varek's shadow weavers are following us into the between. We must move faster. I thought you said time moved differently here, Rhen protested. How are they catching up already? Shadow is one of the 5 aspects, Kira answered before Elara could, her mind racing through everything Theron had taught her. And the between is a realm of shadows and death. They have an advantage here that we don't. Then we run. Elara turned and began moving with inhuman speed, her form blurring as she glided across the grey landscape. Stay close to me. The path ahead grows treacherous. Kira ran, Rhen beside her, as the grey roads began to twist and change. The spirits they passed now were darker, more aggressive. Some reached out with translucent hands, trying to grasp at the living warmth the 2 women carried. Others simply watched with hollow eyes, their forms too corrupted by time and anguish to retain any humanity. The hunting horns grew closer. Kira risked a glance over her shoulder and immediately wished she hadn't. Behind them, moving through the grey mist like sharks through water, came figures in black cloaks that seemed to drink in what little light existed in this realm. Shadow weavers, she realized, and more than she'd expected. At least 6, moving with terrible purpose. And at their center, a figure she recognized even at this distance, a woman with platinum hair and armor that gleamed like dark ice, Lady Serina Coldwell, the Frost Widow herself. "Faster!" Elara commanded, and suddenly the grey road beneath their feet began to slope downward, descending into a region where the mist grew thick enough to choke on. "We near the border. The passage to the mortal realm is just ahead, but we must reach it before they close the distance." Kira's lungs burned. She wasn't built for running. Years of hunching over manuscripts had left her with a scholar's body, not a warrior's. But fear and desperation drove her forward. The fragment blazed against her chest now, hot enough that she could feel it through her clothes, as if it were calling out to the second piece that waited somewhere ahead. Behind them, Serina's voice rang out, clear despite the distance. "You cannot run forever, little scribe. The crown cannot be reforged. Varek has already won." Lies, Kira told herself. But doubt crept in anyway, cold and insidious. "There!" Elara pointed ahead with her spectral blade. Through the thick grey mist, Kira could see it, a shimmer in the air like heat waves rising from sun-baked stone. Another threshold, this one leading back to the mortal realm. "Through the gate! Now!" They burst through the threshold together, Kira and Rhen tumbling over each other in their haste. The transition was more violent this time, like being torn through cloth, and Kira felt something in her chest wrench painfully as she crossed from the realm of the dead back into the land of the living. She hit solid ground hard, the impact driving the breath from her lungs. Sand. She'd landed in sand. Kira rolled onto her back, gasping, and found herself staring up at a sky the color of dried blood. The sun, or what passed for it here, was a dim red coal hanging over a landscape of ash and desolation. The Ashen Wastes. Rhen groaned beside her, pushing herself to her knees. "7 hells and back again," the captain wheezed. "If I never walk the grey roads again, it'll be too soon." Elara's form materialized beside them, though here in the mortal realm she was barely visible, just a suggestion of armor and light already beginning to fade. "I can go no further," the spirit said. "My oath binds me to the between, but the Red Spire lies 3 miles north. You'll see it, a tower of rust-colored stone rising from the waste. Beneath it lies the Forgemaster's tomb, and within that tomb, the second fragment of the Crown of Dawn. The Forgemaster, Kira asked, climbing to her feet. Everything hurt. One of the 12 founders. Yes, she who shaped the crown itself before she passed beyond all realms. Elara's form flickered. Beware the trials she left. The Forgemaster believed that only one worthy of the crown should claim its pieces. Many have entered her tomb. None have returned. Wonderful, Rhen muttered, checking her weapons. Why is it never simple? Elara turned her fading attention to Kira. Your mother would be proud of you, child of the Brightborn line. As am I. May the light of the crown guide you. The spirit vanished, leaving Kira and Rhen alone in the vast expanse of the Ashen Wastes. The landscape was hostile in its desolation. Grey sand stretching in all directions, dotted with twisted rock formations that looked like frozen screams. The air was hot and dry, stealing moisture with every breath. In the distance, volcanic mountains belched dark smoke into that blood-red sky. And 3 miles north, exactly as Elara had said, a tower rose from the waste like a crimson fang, the Red Spire. Well, Rhen said, adjusting the straps of her pack. At least we're not walking through the land of the dead anymore. Give it time, Kira replied, starting north toward the tower. Something tells me the Forgemaster's trials might be just as deadly. They walked in silence, conserving their energy. The heat was oppressive, but Kira barely noticed. Her mind was racing, replaying everything Elara had told her. Her grandfather, dying to protect his people. Her mother, fleeing with an unborn child. 20 years of hiding, of running, of pretending to be something less than she was. All leading to this moment, to this place. They were perhaps a mile from the spire when Kira felt it. A prickling at the back of her neck, the sensation of being watched. She turned slowly, scanning the desolate landscape behind them. There, on a ridge perhaps half a mile distant, a figure in dark clothing stood watching them. Even at this distance, Kira could see the glint of metal. A spyglass, perhaps? Or a weapon? An Obsidian Council spy. They'd been found. Rhen, Kira said quietly, we need to move faster. The captain followed her gaze and cursed. How many? One that I can see. But where there's one, there's always more. Wren's hand went to her cutlass. Can you fight them? With your weaving? Kira felt for the threads of power around her, the invisible rivers of the weave. They were here, even in this dead place, but they felt thin, stretched. Using magic here would be difficult, dangerous, and she was already exhausted from the journey through the between. Maybe, she admitted, but not well, and not for long. Our best chance is to reach the tomb first, get the fragment before they can stop us. Then we run. They ran. The Ashen Wastes were treacherous underfoot, the sand hiding stones and gaps that threatened to turn an ankle with every step. But fear drove them forward, and behind them, on that distant ridge, Kira knew reinforcements were being called. The race for the second fragment of the Crown of Dawn had begun, and somewhere in the darkness, Varek Shadowmere would be learning that his greatest threat had emerged from the between itself, and was now within reach of the power he'd spent 20 years ensuring would never be reunited. The Red Spire grew larger with every step, a tower of ancient stone that seemed to drink in the blood-colored sunlight. At its base, Kira could see the entrance to the tomb, a doorway carved with symbols she recognized from the oldest texts in the shattered tower, the language of the founders. And somewhere in the darkness behind them, hunting horns began to sound again. Kira's hand found the fragment beneath her cloak, feeling its warmth, its pulse. "Soon," she promised it. "Soon you'll be whole again. Soon we'll finish what my grandfather started." Soon, the fragment seemed to pulse back. Everything changes. They reached the entrance to the tomb as the sun began to set, painting the Ashen Wastes in shades of crimson and shadow. Kira paused at the threshold, looking back one last time at the world she was leaving behind. The spy was gone from the ridge, but she knew they were coming. Knew that by entering this tomb, she was committing to a path from which there would be no return. But then, there never had been a return. Not since the moment she'd touched that sealed door in the shattered tower. Not since the fragment had chosen her. Not since she'd learned the truth of her blood. "Ready?" Rhen asked beside her. Kira took a deep breath, feeling the weight of destiny settling across her shoulders like a mantle. "Ready," she said, and stepped into the darkness of the Forgemaster's tomb. Behind them, the sun finally set, and the void hours began.